Hi there, Maude, Garrett here, huge Star Wars fan, and as promised, I said I would review Rogue One, the latest Star Wars and first anthology film. Now, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, we all know that, and I always have incredibly high expectations when a new movie comes out. If you don't know, I gave The Force Awakens a 7 out of 10. And if you head over to SourceFed Nerd, I did a little thing called ForceFed where I completely dissected that movie. But now it's time to break down Rogue One. And I'm going to tell you what I really liked about it and what I didn't love about it. And there were quite a lot in both. More good than bad though. I will preface by saying that. I will also say that I actually like this movie a lot more than I did The Force Awakens. And I base that on the feeling that I had when I was leaving the cinema. So I saw this on Monday night. The movie comes out, I think, on Friday, and I'm going to see it again on Thursday night. My views may change after the second viewing, but right now, here are my thoughts. Warning, completely spoiler-based, guys. I've seen the movie. I'm going to talk about things that happened in the movie. So if you haven't seen it, do not watch this because I will wreck it for you. And I don't want to be that person. You have been warned. So let's start with the things I really liked about this movie. First and foremost, what I loved about Rogue One was that they took risks. This is something that I don't feel The Force Awakens actually did. I felt they were trying to come back from the damage of the prequels, and J.J. Abrams was like, all right, well, what did they love about Star Wars? Let's harness that and deliver it again in a different way, which is why it got the nickname A New Hope 2.0. The reason why I liked this movie more than The Force Awakens as well was because it was a standalone film. They weren't dangling unanswered questions over our heads the entire time. They weren't leaving us guessing in big, big ways. They told a contained story with a start, a middle, and a big end. End, over end, done end. And that was great. It's not stay tuned for 2 or 3 more years where you'll figure out who the fuck Snoke is. I mean, that's kind of cool, but at the end of the day, it's hard to invest in characters that you don't know enough about. And keeping these big secrets for me, I didn't love. I will talk about character development being in the not so great side for now, but in terms of a contained story, thumbs up from me. So previously with the Skywalker trilogies, you're focusing on Jedi. Let's just say the average person picked up an actual lightsaber. I give them 15 seconds before they cut their arm off. But because they're Jedi, they have training in the Force and they're almost invincible. Not completely invincible. We all know how Order 66 went down. But they have skills beyond the average person. They have skills beyond the exceptional person. We don't have that in Rogue One. We barely see any Jedi at all. Technically, we see a Sith. Loophole. I've said that before in a video. So we're dealing with average people. We're dealing with the normal person. We're dealing with people just like you and I, who realize the greater good, who realize what they're fighting for, who realize the stakes that are involved, who realize what sacrifice means. And the sacrifice that we see in this movie is damn real. And it got me like a blaster to the feels, which hit because stormtroopers and death troopers can actually hit in this movie. Let's put that in the good side as well. I'll give that points. Those death troopers looked sick. I think because of the stakes, I felt a lot more emotional. I was emotional for a number of reasons. One, I was hungover. I don't recommend seeing this movie like that. I felt a little vulnerable, but that's okay. Kind of hit me harder. But I was feeling emotional in a very positive way because this nostalgia wave would just wash over me and it was almost too much to handle. This happened a couple of times. It happened when the rebel fleet showed up to help out the rebels. I thought that was just beautiful and I was like, oh, seeing those X-Wings fly into battle, oh, it's just beautiful. It was one of my favorite parts of The Force Awakens and it happened again here. Hearing Vader's theme, the music, I've talked to a lot of people about it and the composure is getting love and hate. I really liked how they slowed down a lot of the music. They gave it a little bit more of a somber feel. Sometimes it was a little bit up and boppy, but in terms of Vader entering the room and it was a really slowed down Imperial theme, I fucking welled up. I was like, but it was great. It worked really well. Another thing I loved about it was they nailed the humor. Obviously, they keep thinking that a comic relief character is what's necessary. Jar Jar Binks. You know, he was not supposed to be funny. He wasn't supposed to be an idiot. He was supposed to be like quite a serious character. And then they thought, no, we've got kids watching this movie. We need to make people laugh. Well, we've finally got a very, very funny character. In fact, I'll say characters. We know that K2SO, phenomenal. Alan Tudyk did an amazing job with this character. He just married this bland and kind of like monotonal delivery with sharp wit that I just adored, and the whole cinema was raucous with laughter. But the other character that really surprised me was Donnie Yen. When I first heard that he was in the movie as like a blind, almost samurai, I didn't really get it. I was like, what's happening here? He impressed the pants off me. His performance was astounding. He was stealing scenes that he was in. And when they bagged him and he was like, are you kidding me? I'm blind. I lost it. It was so well delivered. He was absolutely fantastic in it. And I'm going to give him way more bonus points as well and flood the good side with Donnie Yen love, because his choreographed fighting was just incredible. That guy with the stick just, oh my gosh, was so much fun watching. He was incredible. Donatello, still fighting, see where I'm going here. Yeah, like Ninja Turtles. Old ones, cartoons, not the new movies. Seeing space battles as well makes my little heart sing. Not only were the X-Wings shooting into the whole battle scene, tears, but we saw TIE fighters, we saw TIE strikers. They were beautiful in the air as well. But we also saw how the Rebel fleet would use almost strategy here, which is what the Mon Calamari are very, very good at, which is why they're usually admirals. And we saw how they would use their vessels in combat, which was so great. I loved everything about that. Not only did the X-Wings make it through the barrier and they were fighting on the coastal terrain of the planet Scarif, which was beautiful, but the ones that didn't make it were having sort of like the external space battles as well. So there was so much going on and a lot of destruction, but oh my God, that was beautiful. So that's going in the good pile. I loved the little nods that it had leading up to A New Hope. It kind of really established the timeline again, but it was so great to see these characters sort of like earlier and where they were. For example, Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba. Obviously, Ponda Baba's got 2 arms at this stage, but it still looks like that Dr. Evazan doesn't like you either. Still, which was great. It wasn't quite on point, but it was enough to be like, yeah, that was really cool. Like, you care. Seeing Bail Organa back was really cool as well. I think the casting was amazing for Mon Mothma. The CGI characters, though, I will say it worked for one and it didn't work for another. So we are talking about the positives of the movie. I think they did a really great job with Leia. I think Carrie Fisher would be really pleasantly surprised with how that turned out. And it was done in a nice enough dose that we just got a bit of it. It set the scene. In fact, the last sort of chunk of the movie was by far the best. The action sequences, the sacrifices that were being made, the stakes were there. You really felt a wash of emotion all over you. They saved the day, you know, they did the task, because that was kind of the most important thing. It wasn't trying to find love. It wasn't trying to get the girl. It was making sure that the plans for this indestructible Death Star got to the right people. And it wasn't an easy task, and they all gave their lives to make sure that it happened. You know, and when you hear Mon Mothma say in Return of the Jedi, many Bothans died to bring us that information. Now you're going, hell yeah, they fucking did. Good Lord. It's not just being like, boop, got it. It's a big task to do. So yeah, the stakes are there. And then, of course, knowing that they do end up in Leia's hands. We all knew that because we know how this ends. We didn't know how we got there, but we know the ending. But it still was beautiful to see, you know, just how close the rebels were to not transferring that data over. So that CGI, I'll give it a thumbs up. And quickly, just to go over some other points that I loved the new tone. This was a Saving Private Ryan in space. This was a war film. This was a heist film. This was not your typical Star Wars film, and they very successfully nailed this tone and were able to change it completely whilst making it still feel like a Star Wars movie. So thumbs up for that. I love that it fundamentally wasn't a love story. I mean, Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader because of love, technically. Luke Skywalker found out love in all the wrong ways with his sister. And they even had an opportunity to have like a kissing moment, and they didn't take it. And I kind of really loved that, because it would have felt forced and it wouldn't have felt authentic. They didn't know each other, and they started off really not liking each other. So why would they just kiss? Because their lives are going to end? If some guy was next to me and I saw the world blowing up and he started going, I wouldn't be like, yeah, I guess. I mean, what have I got to lose? My life in 7 seconds? Still wouldn't do it. I loved also that we saw the rebels really being rebels. We saw the conflict that they had at the Jedi Council, everyone having differing opinions, people fighting for something and it not being sort of like supported from the rest of the council there. I thought that was kind of great. And then from that, having rebels rebelling from the rebels. There's a lot of rebel happening right now. Cue the David Bowie song. But the subsector, you know, going, no one thinks this is going to work, so we're going to try and make it work, and we're probably all going to die. That's what fighting the Empire is all about. They got that. That was cool. Also in the thumbs up pile, the second half of the movie, for obvious reasons. I kind of went over them all previously, but I really do want to address that the second half of this movie bloody nailed it. So I'm giving the second half of this movie thumbs up. And the last thing that I want to give big kudos to, what I think this movie really nailed, was the fear and imposing force that is Darth Vader. Usually when we saw him, his choreography was a little clunky, it was a little sort of slow. It was not something that was kind of threatening. His voice, you know, his kind of stance, listening to his, that's usually what instilled fear. But we saw a whole new side to Vader that we haven't actually seen before. If you've read Lords of the Sith by Paul S. Kemp, you'd know about this. Him and the Emperor would go around just kind of mass destruction, like doing some heavy damage. And seeing him, one man, half a man, taking on just a flurry of people coming at him. He just was untouchable. He was invincible. He was fucking scary. He induced fear. And this was the Vader that I think we needed to see. This is the Vader that we all know exists, but now it's 100% confirmed. Watching him was breathtaking. So well done, Rogue One. Like, bloody got Vader so well. So that's what I loved about this movie. Let's talk about some of the things that I don't think worked so well. Let's get into the first half of the movie. Obviously, there needed to be exposition. We needed to set up who Jyn Erso was, why her father played a very, very prominent role in being the mastermind behind the Death Star. And then it kind of would jump back and forward into cutscenes to kind of remind you who they were. But I felt like they were drilling one point home, and that was the point we kind of established first. It's clear that the Emperor has Galen Erso wrapped around their little finger. Actually, no, it's more of a chokehold. And he's understood that. He's seen his wife being killed in front of his eyes because she tried to fight back. He realized that that wasn't an option. So he did the only thing that he thought he could do, and that was to go along with being basically kidnapped and put to work and planting the Achilles heel in this weapon of mass destruction. Praying and hoping that his daughter was going to be okay. We got that loud and clear straight up. So we didn't need so many cutback sequences to kind of establish that. What I would have loved to have seen more is why Jyn Erso didn't want a part of the rebellion. She didn't want to make it her fight. She wanted to have nothing to do with it. If that were me in that situation, I'd want to try and rescue my dad. That would be my number one priority, is how I can save him, how I could bring back the only member of my family back to me, you know? So for her to be so dismissive, it didn't really make sense. And there were a few times that characters had these inconsistencies where it was like, I don't really understand. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I think her going from, I don't want a bar of this at all, to, I will do whatever I can to save my father, it didn't really make as much sense. It wasn't too fluid for me. It may have actually been fine for you, but just for me, I didn't really like that. What I would have loved to have seen was why she was captured, why she was imprisoned, what was she doing? I kind of would have loved to have seen a scenario where she was stealing food, or she was a scavenger or a street rat or something like that, and she was really good at it. I just did one thing wrong that ended up with her being, you know, behind bars in a way. That would have made sense to me. And it's not just the character that I had a problem with, it was actually Felicity Jones's acting. I don't think she was necessarily bad. It's just that everyone else around her was really good. And she's supposed to be our protagonist. She's supposed to be the one that we've got her back. We believe in her. We stand by her. But it fell a little flat for me. There were a lot of characters that we were dealing with as well. We were building up this small little collective group. I would have loved to have known a little bit more about Diego Luna. He's been fighting this since he was a child. Why? Why does this mean so much to him? How did he gain rank over the years? Why did they choose him? What was his specialty? These are kind of things I needed to know a little bit more about him as well. Because you realise that these two characters and their dynamic is what should carry this film. So we just needed a little bit more investment with those two. And I gave love to Leia's CGI, but I wasn't a fan of the Tarkin CGI. I understand why they needed him in this movie. They've written a whole book about him, and if you haven't read it, it actually does tell a lot about this character and how he rose through the ranks. And I know that he's an integral part of the Death Star because he ends up being completely in charge of it. And so you see this Ben Mendelsohn character, Krennic, and then you're like, well, how does it kind of change hands? And the battles and internal struggles that you see between two people of seniority inside the Imperial force was really, really great to watch. So that's a thumbs up for that one. But at the same time, they relied too heavily with Tarkin being in these scenes. He was not just kind of, over the shoulder or a few lines of dialogue to really hone in the point. He was in complete back and forth dialogue scenes, which I think overused it a little bit. It was very obvious that he wasn't a real person. Anyone who knows Star Wars at all knows that the actor that played Tarkin had passed away. So that's why they had to use the CGI. And it's always tricky when you're talking about timelines. And the movie that they filmed back in 1977, they're trying to tell a story that took place before that. So that's always going to be a little bit hard. And I was interested to see how they would tackle that. I just think, like the Leia scene, in small doses. Do what you have to do, not what you want to do. And although I loved Mendo, got our Aussie, his accent was a little bit all over the place. All in all, though, I loved Mendo's performance. I thought the dialogue that he was sharing with Tarkin and Vader was really compelling. You get this dick swinging contest that they're all in. They're trying to pander and gain favor from Vader and the Emperor. Like, that was really cool. And I think that talking to a completely CGI character must have been pretty tough. I mean, the prequel showed that it doesn't work all the time, and this time it did. But where was Mendo from? I know he's Australian, but in Star Wars he was Australian, kind of sounded English half the time as well. It wasn't really consistent with his accent. But I'm not complaining. If he is really supposed to sound Australian, then, I could get used to hearing Lord Vader. So overall, what did I think of this movie? Well, I gave The Force Awakens a 7. I gave this movie an 8. I gave it an 8. I really did like it. I could even be twisted this arm if I see it again to give it an 8.5. I thought the second half was a lot better than the first half. They really hit some good notes throughout this all. I loved the stakes. I loved the action sequences. I loved the comedy relief here. I love K2SO. Some people are saying that maybe his death was a little bit swept under the rug, but I kind of liked that the whole time he was begrudgingly helping Jyn Erso, and then he sacrificed himself to save them both. Whether that was just because of Diego or that was for both of them, I'm not sure. And it's a little bit of a shame that they didn't go back and try and rescue just his mainframe or whatever it was that they could maybe steal another Imperial droid like that and re-upload him. So it's like he never really dies. That could be cool. But the movie really proves that everyone dies. Everyone dies. They're all dead. I cried. I was going to say 4. I cried 4 times during the movie watching it, and I cried another time on the way home thinking about it, because I'm not sure many people are going to say this, but for me it had that real Shakespearean tragedy feel behind it. There was just so much sacrifice and so much kind of death on the cusp of these people reaping the rewards of the efforts that they put in, that it was really kind of an emotional punch. So loving this movie, thought it was great, can't wait to see it again. But what do you think? Do you agree with any of the points that I'm making? Do you kind of disagree as well? I'm hearing more and more mixed reactions with this one. A lot more love than hate. And as you can see with my review, I had a lot more love than hate for it as well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts too. That's it from me. I really hope you enjoyed my review of Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. And until next time, this is Maude Vader. Because it sounds like Lord Vader. Fuck, I'm cool. Bye.